For section 2.6, solving two-step equations, we are going to solve equations that require two steps. So when we're doing this, the math practice that we're going to use is we're going to look for and make use of structure. Equations in math have a lot of structure to them, and in order to solve these equations for variables, we're going to use that structure to manipulate it to get the variable by itself so we know what the variable equals. So in order to do this, we're going to go through steps. So a lot of things that have structure, we're able to work through steps to get through. So when we do this, we're going to begin on the variable side. So sometimes the variable might be on the left side, and sometimes it might be on the right side. No matter what, we're going to start on that side, and our goal is to get the variable by itself. So we're going to manipulate our numbers to get the variable by itself. In order to do that, we need to cancel the non-variable number by performing the opposite operation. So in these two-step equations, we're going to have two numbers. One of them is going to have a variable attached to it, and the other one is going to be just a number by itself. We're going to work with that number by itself first, and we're going to do the opposite operation. When we do that, we're going to perform the opposite operation on that number, but it's really important that you notice that whatever we do to one side of the equation, you always have to do to the other side. So equations are like a balance, are like a scale. And so if you have an equation, then both sides of it are equal. And so imagine a scale that's equal on both sides. But then if you put something onto one side of it, that's going to tip it a little bit. So they're not going to be equal anymore. So if you add that to one side, you have to add it to the other to keep it equal. Just like with equations, if you add something or if you do something to one side, you have to do it to the other side. So after we get rid of that number that's just standing by itself, we're still going to have a number that's attached to the variable. So we're going to cancel that number that's attached to the variable by performing the opposite operation. So in both of these two steps, I say that we're going to perform the opposite operation. Well, let's just think about what those are real fast. Let's make a little note of it. So opposite operations. If I have multiplication, the opposite operation of that is division. If I have addition, the opposite operation of that is subtraction. All right, so going back to our notes, we go through all of these steps. We now have the variable by itself, but we're not quite done yet. We need to make sure we simplify. We always want our answers in as simple as possible. So when I say simplify, that does not mean a decimal. And that does not mean a mixed number. If a number divides into a integer, so if it becomes an integer, perfect. But if it does not divide evenly into an integer and it is a fraction, you don't need to make it a decimal. You don't even need to make it a mixed number. Just make sure that your numerator and your denominator are as simple as possible. So make sure that there's not a number that you can divide out of both your numerator and denominator. Once you do all of this, you have your final answer, but you need to always check your answer. In this section, I am making you check your answer. When you get to a quiz or test, I might not make you, but you should, just to make sure that you got it correct. So let's go on. Before we do some examples, I just want you to kind of read this for a moment. So some of these problems you might be able to do in your head, or you might be able to do a little differently. But this section, it's very, very, very important that you work through these steps and that you show your work exactly how you need to be, because you're going to use this, and this is some more foundation for the more challenging problems that we're going to get to in the next section. So everything that we have been doing so far in this unit is leading to these bigger problems. So we need to make sure that we're going through these steps as preparation and as a strong foundation for those bigger problems. Let's go ahead and try this out. So my first example, I have negative 3x plus 2 equals 20. So if I look at this, I'll notice that negative 3 is connected to the x. So I'm going to just cover that up with my hand. I'm covering it up, and I see that the 2 is by itself. So I need to move the 2 to the other side. Well, I have a plus 2, so my opposite operation is minus 2. And since I do that to the left side of the equation, I have to do it to the right side. Now when I do this, I have my negative 3x that's still there. My 2 minus 2 cancels out. I have my equals, and now I need to do 20 minus 2, which is 18. So now I just have negative 3x equals 18. When I have that negative 3 and that x touching, they're right next to each other with nothing in between them, then that means multiplication. So the opposite operation of multiplication is division. Since this is a negative 3, I need to divide by negative 3. My negative 3 divided by negative 3 cancels out, and I'm left with x equals negative 6. X is by itself now, so that is my final answer. Now I'm going to go through and check this. To check it, I'm going to rewrite my original equation. So I'm going to rewrite negative 3x plus 2 equals 20, except instead of writing x, I'm going to put negative 6. So I have negative 3 times negative 6. I'm just putting parentheses to separate my numbers. Plus 2 equals 20. So now I'm going to go through, and to check it, I need to make sure that the left side of the equation is equal to the right side. And so I'm going to perform order of operations on this side. And if it comes out to 20, then I got the correct answer. So here I see that I have multiplication and addition. And so I know from order of operations that I need to do the multiplication. So I'm going to do negative 3 times negative 6, which is positive 18. I'm going to bring down that plus 2 and that 20. 18 plus 2 is 20, so I know that 20 equals 20, so this is correct. If I had worked this out and I had gotten something like 19 equals 20, that's not a true statement, so that means that either I messed up somewhere here in my order of operations, or I messed up somewhere up here and I did not get the correct answer. So that is what's really, really important about you checking your answer, because it'll tell you if you did your work correctly in the first place. All right, let's go on to example 2. Go ahead and try this one on your own. Pause the video, try it on your own, and then you can check with, once you're done, play the video and check and make sure that you did everything correctly. So I'm noticing that the variable side of this equation is over here. I need to cover up my 4D, and I see that negative 6 is all alone over there. So I have negative 6 because I'm always looking at the sign in front of the number. So I know that my opposite operation is plus 6. To get rid of a negative, I need to do a positive. My 6's cancel out, and I'm left with positive 4D equals negative 54 plus 6. So plus a positive 6 is going to be negative 48. Now my 4 and my D are right next to each other, so that means it's multiplication. So to undo multiplication, I'm going to divide. My 4's cancel out, and I'm left with D equals negative 12. Now to check this, I'm going to go down here and I'm going to rewrite my original equation, but instead of writing d, I'm writing negative 12, and I'm just separating my numbers with the parentheses. Now I'm going to work through this order of operations on the left side. I need to do multiplication first, so I'm going to do 4 times negative 12, which is negative 48. And I'm just bringing everything else down. Negative 6 plus negative 48 is negative 54. So this works. I got the correct answer. All right, we have one more problem to work through together. Once again, if you're feeling pretty good about this, pause the video, work through this on your own, and then once you're done, play the video and see if you did it correctly. So I see that my p is actually on the right side, so I need to start over on the right side of my equation. I see that the p and the 7 are attached, so I'm covering that up, and I always look at the sign in front. So that negative sign right there is actually connected to the 7p. So I know that I need to get rid of the 9, and it's a positive 9 because there's nothing in front of it. So to undo that, my opposite operation is going to be subtraction. So I need to subtract 9 from both sides. 58 minus 9 is 49. My 9's cancel out, and I'm left with negative 7p. That negative is still in front of the 7p. To get rid of that negative 7, I'm going to divide by negative 7. 49 divided by negative 7 is negative 7. My negative 7's cancel out. So I have my final answer. Now I'm going to go down here and I'm going to check. So once again, to check, I'm going to write my original equation. But instead of writing the p, I'm going to write negative 7. So I'm going to go through. I need to do the multiplication first. So 7 times negative 7 is negative 49. And I'm just rewriting everything else. So 58 equals 9 minus negative 49. At this point, I need to see that I have a minus, so I need to change my signs. I'm going to add the opposite, or I'm going to leave change. 9 plus 49 is 58. So 58 is equal to 58. I did get the correct answer. That is all for this section. So you are ready to end these notes and go on and work on the homework.